Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says he would consider dropping out of the Texas Senate race if certain demands are met. Paxton is currently in a heated battle for the Republican nomination with Senator John Cornyn.
The two contenders were forced into a runoff election set for May 26th following Tuesday's primary results. In a poll on X, Paxton laid out his conditions for dropping out, writing in part, quote, "The Save America Act is the most important bill the U.S. Senate could ever pass, and I'm committed to helping President Trump get it done. I would consider dropping out of this race if Senate leadership agrees to lift the filibuster and pass the Save America Act." John Cornyn is a coward who has refused to support abolishing the filibuster to pass this bill. John Cornyn responded to Paxton's post, writing, quote, "I repeat what I have said consistently. I support the bill and have encouraged Senate Republicans to get it done."
This ultimatum comes after President Trump said on Wednesday that he would soon make an official endorsement for the race. And he said that whichever candidate he doesn't endorse should drop out. In a Truth Social post, he said they need to totally focus on beating State Rep James Talarico on the Democrat side.
Now, Cornyn is one of the main backers of the Save America Act, which would require documentary proof of citizenship when registering to vote. But Paxton also said he won't drop out unless the Senate agrees to end the filibuster. And on that issue, Cornyn has been much more hesitant. Back in 2022, he argued that eliminating the filibuster would, quote, break the Senate by giving too much power to the majority. More recently, Cornyn said in November, quote, "There's many good reasons to preserve the filibuster. I think we ought to consider all options. My position hasn't really changed, but I'm willing to listen."
Meanwhile, on the Democrat side, James Talarico is getting ready for the November election after defeating Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett in Tuesday's primary. But following his victory, Talarico has been the subject of outrage from some on the right, especially when it comes to how he presents his religious beliefs. Videos from several years ago have resurfaced online and gone viral this week, where Talarico argues God is non-binary and Jesus Christ was a radical feminist. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis wrote on X, a candidate for statewide office in Texas claiming God is non-binary, that dog won't hunt. And right-wing commentator Matt Walsh says, it's tough because I really want to gloat over Jasmine Crockett's loss, but the guy who beat her is somehow 100 times worse in every way.
I was saying this when they were running against each other. I think the biggest difference between Jasmine Crockett and James Talarico was just the way that they presented to the public.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually the policy.
No, not at all.
So I was kind of like, everybody's like, oh, he's so moderate. It's like, no, Jasmine just is a firecracker. And that's what her position was, intentionally to have this response, like the Newsom approach to President Trump in that way. And Talarico was like, oh, I can walk across the aisle. But the policy was really
very similar.
Very
yes,
similar.
I agree.
So I think nobody should be shocked, but I guess everyone who was introduced to Talarico more recently, that because of the Colbert interview and because of, the way he's able, he's a politician and a good one, the way he's able to,
shift. I think people were sort of lured into a false sense of security by a lot of the media coverage of Talarico that did insinuate that he was more moderate than Jasmine Crockett, and he's just like a folksy white guy who's like a pastor or whatever it is. Pastor in training, I don't know. But now that some of his older statements are coming out, they're like, okay, we've been duped.
Well, he's former school teacher. He has some of those things that they tried with, and I know it's a terrible example because of Minnesota and the timing, but
no,
Tim Walz,
I'm glad you said this. I've been calling him the Texas Tim Walz.
Yeah, he has some of those things. Texas is a really hard state to try to do this in, where the policies don't actually get combed through, right? Texas is a really conservative state. It's one of the states where Democrats were gaining some traction in 2020. In 2024, with Kamala, they lost a lot of that traction. And so has always been eyes that Texas could possibly turn more purple, as it hasn't in years, but it could do something different. But it really would take the right candidate that understands the place. It's not New York and Mamdani. New York is a very blue place. So you have to have the right candidate to meet the moment where it could possibly be a more purple state.
Yeah, let's get into the Ken Paxton, John Cornyn fight, because this is really fascinating too. So the reason that Ken Paxton sent out this tweet saying, well, I'll drop out, but only if you all lift the filibuster and pass the SAVE Act, that's because pretty much every report, and I've been hearing this too from sources, is that Trump intends on endorsing Cornyn.
Okay.
And the reason why is because he thinks that Cornyn is more electable in the general against Talarico because he is a little bit more moderate than Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton comes with a lot of baggage. He's had corruption scandals, and he has a situation with his family where he was treating his wife very poorly. We'll just put it that way. And so Cornyn is a safer bet for Trump if he wants to keep the Senate majority. But that has angered a lot of conservatives in Texas and members of Trump's base who say, well, Paxton is ideologically more in line with Make America Great Again, so why would we not go with him? The polls only show a slight difference in electability between Cornyn and Paxton, but that's basically where we're at. And so Paxton is throwing it out there like, okay, I'll do what Trump wants. I'll drop out if he endorses Cornyn, but you have to do this thing first. And I don't understand why he's so hung up on getting rid of the filibuster, because the Senate can pass the SAVE Act without changing the rules. They can do the talking filibuster, where the minority party, each member would have the opportunity to make 2 speeches over a legislative session. If the Senate doesn't formally adjourn, then that legislative session, or legislative day rather, can last basically as long as they want it to. And you just have to tire out the Democrats, let them all give their speeches, and then eventually you can get to the point where you've exceeded all of those requirements and you can pass the bill. But the problem is that nobody in the Senate wants to do any darn work. They're all lazy. And this is consistent with all politicians, is they're all lazy. They work 4 days a week. They're constantly in recess. It's ridiculous. Just stay there for a few days and get the darn thing done.
So what I will say is that from now, which is March through May, Talarico, and beyond May, and when they decide who the candidate is on the Republican side, Talarico has an opportunity to build up whomever his base in Texas might be, and to decide what his new messaging will be, or how he will garner the crowd or even get apathetic voters out to support him. But what will happen for the next 2 months if Cornyn and Paxton get in this runoff is that we're going to see probably a lot of nasty advertising and a lot of combative things that bring up all the things that you alluded to, specifically regarding Paxton. So there'll be this big disconnect between, obviously, the ads towards Cornyn will be very much about how he's not aligned with President Trump. And obviously the ads toward Paxton will be very much about how he has cheating allegations, securities frauds allegations. You know, there's like, come on.
There's a lot
going on, right? His divorce is messy. So it'll just be like, do you want this type of person running your country? And I don't think that Republicans who know that Texas was swaying in a direction that probably wasn't ideal for them, besides the last election over the last few years, thinks that it's the time to do that, which is why you see the president not endorsing someone who he likes better, but endorsing someone that will likely win, like you see him do with Lisa Murkowski, when it makes sense in states where they're looking for somebody who's not going to be filled with drama. It makes sense. And so it's either lose the position or support who you think will win. And polls are showing that in an actual race to beat Talarico, prior to all this news coming out, because obviously it's going to be recreational, pull skeletons out your closet for Talarico now that he's the candidate. But if he's able to have a run like he did up to this, to beating Jasmine Crockett, you know, he could continue this momentum and try to figure out how to get people who want something different out to vote for him.
Yeah, and Cornyn also has the benefit of incumbency. He has the National Republican Senatorial Committee committed to spending tons of money for him, which they already have.
I think more than like 100 million, right?
It's a ton of money. I think it was like 22-1. He outspent Ken Paxton.
Right, I meant overall for the whole race. Yeah, they already spent a lot.
Of course, yeah. So, I mean, if you want someone who has all that money, that's helpful too, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be some drama until we figure it out.
3 major fast food chains are beefing over who has the best burger. We'll be right back after this.